Hello and welcome back to Mr. Carrow Plays FM23. Now today we're going to do a 5-step process of how I personally start a new save. Now our first step in that process is we go to our tactics screen like so, and we are looking to see what tactic we want or what style of tactical style we want to choose. Now obviously you can play around with this. For me personally, what I choose at this stage is not something I'm going to stick with throughout the save, if you like, but it is something that gives us the kind of basis to see where we want to improve our squad in terms of players. Now, I'm going to choose a controlled possession for the example of this video, and I'm going to choose the formation, and I'm going to effectively keep with what the thumbs up says. I wouldn't play 2 defensive midfielders necessarily, but that is what we're going to do for the argument of this video. Now, what I then do is I then look through the players I've got, and if I've got any players I don't think have got potential, then I leave that position blank. So in terms of goalkeepers, I know Angus Gunn is bound to have some potential, and he does. So I put him in there. And I will follow this throughout the team. So if we do nice and quick here, you've got your Max Aarons. We know that he's going to be pretty good in that position. We put him in there. We do our defenders. You've got Omar Daly and Ben Gibson in there. Maybe put Ben Gibson in there for argument's sake. And then purely on potential here, Omar Daly is going to have higher potential than Hanley, I would imagine, because of his age, although Hanley isn't as old as you imagine he would be. But I'm going to put in Omar Daly in there. And then the same with the left back. We look again at the different areas here of potential. Now, you've got 2 pretty good left backs in there, average maybe at best, but pretty good in terms of their star rating. In real life, they're average at best, but in their star rating in the game, you know, we've got some decent options in there. Now, Sam McAllen is much younger again, so I would imagine his potential will be higher. In this case, it is. And he's English as well, which helps for the homegrown players. So we're going to put him in there. Now, we're going to follow that through to the next stage. We're going to go to our defensive midfielders. Liam Gibbs, being that he's probably 20 years old, is going to have higher potential. So we're going to put him in there like so. And then in our other position, we'll probably put Kane McLean in that position there. And now we follow this through. And I don't think we've got good wingers within our team, but we'll have a quick look. So yeah, within this, I would say that none of those players fit the winger requirements. So this is going to be the first players that we're going to leave blank. And as I said, we do this for a specific reason. That reason is that these are players that I'm going to focus on. These players that I leave blank, these are the transfer targets, if you like, that I'm going to try and solve that problem. And then we go to the left again, and Pookie could play there. I ain't going to play Pookie on the left. So I don't think I've got a player who can specifically play in that position. So that is something that I will try and fix. So you've got 2 areas to fix, if you like. You've got your 2 wingers in this case. Now, there are players that can obviously play there, but do they fit the requirements required at this stage? And the answer to that for me personally is no. So step 2, we're going to look at our staff. Now, within staff, we're going to look and see what we've got in terms of coaching. Now, coaching in this way, you can see that we've got 4 out of the 7 coaches. So we've got some potential to expand the coaching staff within Norwich at the second. You can see that our recruitment is pretty high within the division, 1 space for a scout. And then we've got the medical team, which again is pretty high, and there's not really anything we need to do within that. Not in the first season anyway. Maybe in the second season, as those contracts expire. I've never been one to trying to sack the staff in the first season. I tend to keep them, and as they expire, then I try and upgrade them. That's my personal way of working. People may have different ways of doing it, but that's certainly how I do. Now, what we're going to do as well as in our staff, and you could call this staff and training if you like, is we're going to look at our coaches and their ability in here. Now, what I've found in the past is that the computer, if you like, starts you off kind of if you didn't look at this screen, you're not getting the most out of this potential training opportunities. So if we go to our edit coach assignments and we look within here, you can already see that there are players or people, staff doing multiple training at once. Now, what we're going to look within that is we're going to take out one of these, for example, and see what that does. Like, it brings up our potential to 4 stars, and that doesn't help the guy on 2.5, but it does bring up that 3 extra star for one of the coaches, which is great start. Now, if we scroll down and see what other things could be affecting us in a similar way, you can see that actually you've got this Andy Hughes is doing fitness and he's doing his possession training. So if we take that out, you can see that brings that back up to our 3.5 stars in there. So you can already see that we have made some improvements within that, okay? Now, it's worth pointing out that while you do that, when you take out one of those extra staff, you are going to bring up your workload of your coaching, and that's possibly where you want to look to improve your coaching staff, to bring back that workload. Maybe you get someone who brings the stars up, and maybe you can double up to try and bring the workload down on maybe a lesser staff, certainly in that first year when you're not going to lay people off because you don't want to spend the money on that, you can utilize them to bring the workload of your staff down. Okay, so the next stage we're going to look at is transfer clauses. Now, this is something I do because it allows us to make some easy money. Now, there isn't a guarantee that every club is going to have this. And actually, to be honest, a lot of clubs do not have this facility because maybe they haven't been successful in selling players and maybe they haven't needed to sell players. So to do that, we go to our transfer section and we're looking in clauses up here. Norwich certainly do have some clauses we can cash in on by the look of it. Now, within this, we want to go in. And you're looking at ones that can make a lot of difference to us. So, for example, Brendia, I could buy out that clause for 580,000. If we look at Sergio Canos, you can buy out that clause for 247,000. If we go down to Ben Godfrey, 1.9 million. So you can see that it is a good thing for us to tap in, especially players, and I think I made a video on this in the past, where you don't necessarily think they are going to maximize their potential at their current club. And for me, there's two great examples on the screen at the second. Jamal Lewis is probably not going to do great within Newcastle in their current spending ability. So cashing in on one of his clauses, I would say, is going to be a great thing because him making 51 appearances for Newcastle is probably going to be quite unlikely that he's going to do that. He's probably going to get sold on. He's probably going to get released. Maybe he will make those appearances, but I wouldn't expect him to do. So by allowing and waiting for that to happen, I would say that you are probably waiting for something that is not going to happen. So cashing in on early, losing that 200, just under 200k is probably not going to be a bad move because if he leaves on a free, he's not going to make that appearances anyway. So for me, I would cash in on that like so. And then the other person is Jed Steer. He's a reserve goalkeeper within Aston Villa. Now, to be honest, I wouldn't cash at him because it's so low. And if he was to get sold, then obviously you would reap the rewards of that. Now, I wouldn't imagine he will get sold, but you never know. So for me, I would probably leave that as it is currently. Okay, so the next stage for me that I do, in no particular order if you like, although this could be an order if you like, is to go to staff again. And this time I'm going to look at staff responsibility. Now, the beauty of Football Manager, as we all know, it's up to you how you choose to play this game. You could allow yourself to take control of everything, or if you want, you can delegate specific tasks. Now, what I do is I delegate the general training. So in order to do that, you go to your responsibilities and then your training, and then you want to delegate general training. And I do that because, to be honest, I don't want to do that. I can't be bothered. It's not worth my time. I like the individual training, but general training is not something I particularly want to do. So I will delegate that. I also delegate choosing playing friendlies, because quite often, to be honest, I don't care about friendly games. A lot of people do, great stuff. If I wanted to try out a new tactic, I would also take control. You can delegate and then you can take back control, but generally I'm not bothered by the friendly games. So I will delegate that to my coaching staff, and the same as I will get them to choose and arrange friendlies, because I don't want to bother with that. The same with press conferences. Again, because they're so repetitive and boring, I'm not interested in attending league or domestic cup press conferences, so I will delegate that off. Now, some people might see that as a cop-out, and that would be true perhaps, but for me, it is just not an important thing that I can be bothered to spend my precious time on, have limited time to play the game. Do I want to spend it on doing a press conference that's basically the same every time? No, I do not want to do that, so I delegate that out. Okay, the last tip that I'm going to offer today of the stages that I would do when I start the game, although we have already touched on training, I didn't touch on individual players. Okay, within that, you've got mentoring. This is something that will be blank at the start. I recommend either choosing it yourself, or for me, quite often I ask assistant to assign, and then it will build up a player's mentoring groups. Now, you want to do this early to maximize your opportunities within this, okay? The other thing I do is I will go to the wrong place there, is go to units, and I will go down and I will go and choose individual training for each player. Now, I do this because why would you want them to have general training? Now, somebody did comment on this on a previous video when I said I go specific and say, well, it doesn't make any difference. Well, that's fair enough if that works for you, but for me, I want to make sure that my players are playing the way that I want them to and training in that way. So, for example, Max Aaron, I want him to be able to play as a wing back, and I want him to have those specific attributes. So I'm going to get him to train that way. Now, I understand that not everyone does that, and that's great for them, but that is how I want to do it. Same with Josh Sargent. I want him to be training as a complete forward because that is what is in my tactics. He may not be prone to that on its own, and he's only got 3 stars compared to his target forward and pressing forward. But if you get him to train that, at least you can maximize his potential in that position. Now, you may not be as good as he would be in other positions within that area. However, you can still maximize his potential within that, okay? Now, the other little tidbit I wanted to do within that is add and remove youth players. Now, I think I've done a video on this in the past. When you get your new gens or your regens, whatever you want to call them, at the end of the season or towards the end of the season even, this is the time that you can implement them within your training, and it will improve, especially if you don't have a great youth setup. In terms of, if you're a team that doesn't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of youth staff, this is a great way to maximize their training. And now people may say it is not, but for me, and I have done it a lot especially in 2023, and it's worked great. You maximize your youth players without having to necessarily expose them to first team games if you're not able to do that. You put them in the squad without necessarily fully putting them in the squad, so they're still getting exposed to youth football, but they are getting advanced training. So in order to do that, you just highlight one of the areas and we'll just pick one of these players, and away we go. He now gets added to the group of players within that, and then you assign him your first team training. Now, that is all my tips for this video. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Hit that notification button to see the videos as they are released. Thank you and goodbye.